Hi there, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. This is Melanie and we are talking all things Croptoberfest. This is the second prep video for October 23rd, which is the all-day event in which I'm hosting here on YouTube and in my Facebook group or via email, whichever way is preferable for you to participate. So if you registered for this event, I will send you a package. Now this is my working copy, so it's not all pretty and fancied up yet, but I just wanted you to know that you will get a package, an event package that will have a lot of information about the events, as well as ways that you can help prepare for it. So one of the things that I have done is I have included cut sheets for the layouts. So that will look something like this. For the card class and the embellishment class, yes, there's going to be 3 classes. They will be released throughout the day on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you are participating in the bonus class, I also have a cut sheet for that. For the bonus class, to participate, if you spend $50 through me at Creative Memories, you will automatically get access to the class as well as some free printables. The other way is to buy me 2 cups of coffee over at Buy Me a Coffee. The link is below. That will get you into the class as well. Okay, so basically you'll have at least 3 cut sheets, and these have been designed so that you can cut these apart. And the reason why I've done that is because we're going to mass cut everything that you're going to need, and the easiest and cheapest way that I found to keep track of things is to use just folded paper. This is just 8.5 by 11 printer paper, and basically for every layout we are just going to slot the pre-cut pieces in here, and you'll be ready to go. So how is this going to work? You're going to take the cut sheet, you're going to cut it in half, 4 1/4, and then just cut these individually. Where you cut them doesn't really matter as long as you don't cut through them. So just like that. I'm just going to cut the rest of these up and I'll be back and show you what the next step is. So this is what I'm doing to prep these folded 8.5 by 11 papers. I am just flipping over the pieces that I cut out with the cut list and supply list, if you will. And I am just adding a piece of adhesive. I'm not being particular about it. My ATG gun and I are still not talking, which is why I'm using just the roll in case you're wondering. And then I'm just going to attach that to the front of one of the folded pieces of paper. And that's literally all there is to it. Now, if you want to subsequently store this in a bin or something, you will need something that will be able to accommodate 12-inch wide pieces. Now let's get started. Also included in the event list will be a supply list, and this is not comprehensive. Again, you guys, just remember I'm doing this in anticipation of the event. I will clean this up. It will look slightly different, but the concept will be the same, is that I've labeled each of the items that I'm going to be using and what I'm using, and I'm giving you a space to fill in the name of whatever it is you're substituting if you're not using the Croptoberfest kit. So obviously if you're using the Croptoberfest kit, it's going to be easier because you'll know exactly what I'm doing, but it is possible to substitute out. See the video before this one where I talked about how to substitute the different pieces, okay? So the first things we're going to start with are the pattern paper from the Croptoberfest, and then we're going to move into cardstock, and then we're going to talk about stuff that you have to pull from your stash. Okay, first is what we're calling the feature paper. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take one of the feature sheets and we're going to cut 2 3-inch strips. So again, very simple. These will be horizontal on the final layout, so they will be laying this way. If your paper has a directional orientation to it, just keep that in mind, okay? So we need 2 3 by 12s. And that is going to go in layout number 1. So we're just going to pick up our little envelope sheet and slide that in. Then from the remaining piece, we're going to cut 4 inches. So a 4 and a 2, and that is going to go in layout number 5. From our second sheet, we need to cut an 8-inch square, and the easiest way that I found to do this was to flip it over on the back side. So whatever the feature side is that you're going to use in your layout, I'm going to use the sunflowers. We're going to flip this over, and I'm going to take a ruler and a pencil, and I am just going to mark 2 inches from either side. So 2 inches from here, 2 inches from here, and 2 inches down here. So I'm just going to draw a line and do the same on this side. And the reason why I'm bothering to mark it out versus just guessing is because there's only 2 sheets of this paper in the kit, and I want to maximize it for the layout. So it's really important that I cut this appropriately. And just by measuring this out, I will be able to do that. And it really doesn't take very long. If you've got a ruler, like a quilting ruler or something like that, it's pretty easy to mark out. And then just take your trimmer. Now, if you have a guillotine trimmer, this isn't going to work. You're going to want to either use an X-Acto knife or a trimming system that allows you to start cutting midstream. So with the Creative Memories trimmer, maybe I'll hold this up so you can see. It gives you a point so you know exactly where you're going to trim, and it also shows you where the blade is going to trim on this way. So it makes it pretty easy. If it's not exactly precise, that's okay. The scrap we're going to end up using is going to be slightly smaller than 8 inches, but we do want to try and get as close as possible. Okay, so we're just going to go around and trim this out. Okay, so we've got a frame and the inside piece. The frame is going to go in layout number 2. And because this is a little bit thinner paper, it's not cardstock, I'm just going to lay this on a mat just to protect it. From this piece here, we need to trim this down to 7.5 inches. So we're just going to, if you're concerned that you didn't cut straight, don't cut exactly at 7.5. Cut maybe, you know, just a little bit off to straighten up the edge. And then from there, you can trim down. So once you've got 2 edges that you think are now good, then trim it down to 7.5 inches. That makes sense. Hopefully it does. Okay, so now we have a perfect square. We are going to cut this in half on the diagonal. Now, with the Creative Memories trimmer, in the cutting section here, I can see exactly where this is going to align. So I'm going to basically place one of the corners of the paper on one side and one on the other, and make sure that looks good, and then trim that in half. One of these triangles is going to go in layout number 4. From this remaining piece, what we are going to do is we're going to take the right hand corner and we're going to tuck that up against the blade. So take the right hand corner and move it up against the edge of the cutting system, and we want to cut this at 4 1/4. So we're going to go 4 1/4, and we're going to cut it like that. And then we are going to flip it and we're going to trim. So this is 4 1/4. We're going to flip it, and now we're going to trim this at 3 1/4. So 3 1/4. Okay, so you're ending up with a 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, a right angled triangle, and another right angled triangle that's smaller. These pieces here are going to go in your card class envelope or folder or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so now we're going to take what I'm calling the layering piece of cardstock that you have or paper that you have. I am primarily going to be using it for the stripe. And whenever I use a stripe, I like my stripes to be going this way when I cut across so that I can actually see the stripe versus a stripe going this way. That makes sense. So when I'm trimming in my paper trimmer, I'm going to trim this way. That doesn't mean when I go to do the layouts that I'm necessarily going to do the stripe. I could use the plaid on the other side. It just gives me options that I like. So again, watch your orientation. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to cut 2 1/2-inch strips. So 1 and 2. And these are going to go in layout number 1. Okay, so before we cut any further on this cardstock, we're now going to use a border punch. You can pick any punch that you like. I'm using this Diamond Arches one, I think that's what it's called, by Creative Memories. And I am basically just going to trim across this edge, and then we will trim it to size afterwards. I'm going for approximately 1 inch when I'm finished, so a 1-inch border, but it doesn't really matter. If you've got a border that's going to be smaller, that's okay too. Just whatever you have on hand will be just fine. Okay, so I am just going to align this here, and again, I am using the stripes going this way to trim this out. Okay, so now that we have our decorative edge, we are going to trim this to approximately 1 inch. So we're just going to, you know, line this up. If it's a little bit shy of 1 inch, that's okay. We just want a border approximately like this. This is going to go in layout number 2. Okay, so now we need 3 1/4-inch stripes. Stripes, however you want to call it. Okay, so we need 3 1/4-inch strips. So 1, 2, and 3. 2 of these strips are going to go in layout number 3. If for some reason you didn't cut these precise, for whatever reason, I would select the 2 that are the closest in width and put those in layout number 3. Again, we're just sliding that into the folder, like so. And the last 1/4 inch is going in layout number 4. Okay, we're now going to trim 5 inches off. So we're going to just shift that over and trim 5 inches. And that is going in bonus class number 1. If you are not participating in bonus class number 1, this will just become a scrap in your stash to make whatever layouts you wish to do. The piece that you are left with is 4 inches, or maybe even a little less. It's not super critical. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this paper and we are going to trim this to 4 7/8 by 3 5/8. So we're just going to turn this around. 4 7/8 and 3 5/8. Okay, this will become scrap, as will this, and this is going in your card class folder. From your second sheet, we are going to cut this at 8 inches. Again, watch orientation, and 10 inches. So we're just rotating that and then cutting it at 10 inches. These will become scraps, which we'll use for the embellishment class, so don't get rid of those just yet. This particular piece here is going to go in bonus class 2. If you're not participating in the bonus class, then this entire, there's no need to cut this sheet, and you have a full extra pattern card or pattern paper to do with as you wish. Okay, so we're going to take this piece of cardstock here, or this piece of paper, which I call the supporting, and we're going to cut this in half, so right at 6 inches. Again, this is going to be horizontal, so the final piece will be this way. Make sure your orientation supports that. This one here does have an orientation to it, so it is important. Okay, so now that we have two 6x12s, these are both going in layout number 3. For the second sheet, we are again going to trim it so that the orientation is horizontal, and we're going to trim this first one at 4 inches. So the first cut is at 4 inches. So, and we are going to trim 1 inch off, so this will be 11 inches. So it'll be 4 by 11. Then we're going to take that same paper again, and we're going to trim another 4 inches off. And we are going to trim 3 inches. These two pieces, so the 4 by 11 and the 3 by 4, are going to go in bonus class number 2. From the remainder of this piece, we are going to trim 4 1 1/4 pieces. So we're going to do this in order because we want to keep the pattern. So we're just going to trim this at 1 1/4, and we need 4 of these. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. This becomes scrap, and these, if you want to keep them together in their sequence, you don't have to figure it out later, a paper clip or a bulldog clip is helpful, but it's not necessary. You can always figure out how they go back together. But I am just going to clip it, and they're pretty small pieces, so I am actually just going to clip it to the card class. Okay, card class. From the last strip, we're going to trim this down to 5 1/2. Okay, and then we're going to cut a 2-inch strip. And again, this is just going to go in the scrap bin, and this is going to go in the card class. Now we're moving on to cardstock. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take the yellow cardstock, which I refer to as color number 1. So whatever you have for color number 1, and we are going to cut this in half at 6 inches. And then we're going to flip one, and we're going to cut at 9. Okay, and that is going to go in layout number 2. From the other 6x12 piece, we are going to cut a 6 by 6 inch 6 by 6 inch square. This is going to go in with your embellishment scraps, whatever you want to call it. We're going to take the 6-inch square, and we're going to turn it into a circle. So you can either use a circle cutter or a die cutter or something along those lines, or you can use this punch from Creative Memories. The name is, I call it the Doily Punch, but I don't know, I can't remember what the name is offhand. It will be in the supply list. And basically we're just going to trim this out using this punch. And this punch is super easy. You basically line up the corners, punch, rotate it, punch again, rotate again. You do that 4 times. And then you flip it over and you do repeat 4 times. And we end up with this kind of doily looking circle, which we are now going to cut in half. So we're going to use our trimmer. Again, I'm going to pick a point and just line it up with the line in my trimmer and trim it in half. This is going to go in with our embellishment for our embellishment class, and this one here is going to go in our card class. From the second sheet of yellow, we are going to trim this at 7 inches. And then turn around and trim that at 9. And that is going to go in bonus class layout number 2. Okay, so color number 2 is what we're going to deal with next, and that is the green sheet. We're going to trim this to 4 1/4. So 4 1/4 by 12. Then 2 1/4 by 12. What we are left with is 5 1/2 inches, which we are going to trim 3 inches off. Okay, this is going to go in with our scraps. This one, we need the cutting system, and what we are going to do is we're going to cut out 2 circles, one that is 5 inches and one that is 3 1/2. Okay, so the 5 inch is going to be this. So this is the largest, I think this is the medium, and we're going to use the red blade. We want to make sure we have enough room. Actually, we want to make sure we have it oriented the correct way. I like to kind of just test the alignment. Okay, and pull down and trim, and then I like to just make sure that it is loose before I pick it up. Okay, and then from the remaining piece we're going to cut the inside of the large one, and I am centering this way so that I've got a little bit of scraps that we can use later on. You don't have to be super precise. Okay, and that is cut loose. Scraps for embellishments. Put the trimmer away, or the cutting system away. And all of these pieces are going in layout number 5. Okay, we're now going to use the purple cardstock, and the first cut we're going to make is at 6 inches. This is color number 3, by the way. 6 inches. And then we're going to turn around and trim this at 8 3/4. This is going to go in layout number 4. From the remaining 6 piece, we're going to cut 2 inches off. And this is going to go in bonus class number 1. We're then going to take another 2-inch strip, and we're going to cut at 9 inches. So we will end up with a 9-inch and a 3-inch piece, and this is going to go in a bonus class layout number 2. We are left with a 2-inch strip, at which we are going to cut in half. So we're going to cut this into 1-inch strips very carefully. It's tricky when you get down to these smaller pieces. And this is going to go in the embellishment class. Okay, we're now moving on to color number 4, which is the rust color. The first thing we need to do is trim this to 7 1/2 inches. And we're going to trim this to 7 1/2 inches. And then we're going to take this and we're going to cut it in half again, just like we did earlier. So just cut it in half. Okay, half's going to go in your scrap pile, and the other half is going to go in layout number 4. From the piece that was cut at 7 1/2 inches, so this is 7 1/2 inches, we're going to rotate this and we're going to trim this down to 1 1/2 inches. And this piece is going to go in bonus class number 1. Okay, from the second piece of rust cardstock, we are going to trim this down to 8 1/2 inches by 11. We are going to score this in half. So I'm going to score this at 5.5. And then I'm going to trim this at 4.25. We now have 2 card bases for the card class. So I guess I should have done this before. Sorry, it's out of order. You're going to take the extra scrap from the first page, the one that is for, what is it, about 4.5. That's the one we want. And we're going to trim 5.25. By 4. Okay, that's also going to go in the card class. Okay, now we're going on to color number 5, which is the brown cardstock. And the first thing we are going to do is trim 2 1/2-inch strips. So 1 and 2, and that is going to go in layout number 1. Then we're going to cut 2 3-inch strips. So 3-inch, and then 3 inches, and that, both of those are going to go in layout number 3. And then we're going to need 2 1.25-inch strips, so we're going to need a 1.25 by 12 twice. So that's 1, and 2. And that is going to end up in bonus class number 2. These 2 are going in bonus class number 2. And this is scrap. And then the remaining sheet, we're just going to leave intact. And that is going to go in bonus class number 1. Okay, you guys, we're down to the shimmer sheets. Okay, so we're going to take the bronze shimmer sheet first, and we're going to trim this to 4.5. And then 2.5. These both go in layout number 5. We're then going to take a 2-inch strip and cut this at 10.5. And that is going to go in bonus class layout number 1. We're going to take the second sheet and we are going to trim 4 inches. And we're going to trim 5.25. And 5.25. And we are also going to trim 3.25 if you are doing the bonus class, because these are all going to be bonus card class. Okay, so that's 3.25, and we're going to go 4.25. All of these end up in the bonus card class. Okay, from the champagne cardstock, we are just going to trim a 1/4 inch off. And we are going to trim at 5.5. And that is going to go in the card class.
Optional for the card class is to trim a 1/2 inch by 12. I didn't demo it here, but I will use that when we hit the card class. So 1/2 inch by 12.
And we're going to trim 3.25 by 4.25, and that is going to go in the bonus card class. We're going to have lots of shimmer paper left over, which can be used for embellishments or further enhancing your layouts, making them your own. Okay, so I'm just going to put this in the bonus card class, and then we'll move on to white or cream cardstock. Okay, I pulled out some white 12 by 12 cardstock. I'm just using Stampin' Up. Whisper White. I also have some textured vanilla cardstock here. Either will work, you can tell just by looking. If you want something a little more poppy, the white will make everything pop a little bit brighter and bolder, and then the cream will be a little bit more muted. Mostly I am using white. I have one layout where I am using the cream, just so you know. So for layout number 1, we should have our little envelope here with all our pieces. You can just double check that you've got everything. You should have 2 pieces of the sunflower, 2 pieces of the stripe, and 2 pieces of the brown. And then we will need 2 12 by 12 full sheets of cardstock. So we're just gonna slot that in. And this kit is ready to go for when the class posts. So that's layout number 1. Okay, so for layout number 2, you should have the frame, you should have your punch, your border punch, and you should have the yellow cardstock or color number 1. And you need a 10 by 10 sheet of cardstock. Now here's the thing, you can do a couple different things with this. If you're using the Creative Memories paper, it is flimsy, so you may want to just use a full 12 by 12 sheet of paper and put it behind. It's up to you. You can trim the 12 by 12 paper to go over top, or 10 by 10 paper to go over top. You'll actually end up with a bigger white mat as a result. Or you can do what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 12 by 12 behind, and I'm going to trim a 10 by 10 to put on top. So the instructions say 110 by 10, but just keep in mind that if you are using flimsier paper, you may want to have some sort of backup behind it. So I'm going to do both. So I'm going to add a 12 by 12. I'm going to take a 12 by 12 piece and trim it down to 10 by 10. Okay, so that will be layout number 2. For layout number 3, you should have 2 of the supporting papers, 2 1/4 inch strips, and 2 of the brown papers, and we need 2 12 by 12s. So I'm just going to use white again for those, and that will be layout number 3. For layout number 4, you should have 2 triangle pieces, a purple piece, and a 1/4 inch stripe, and we need 1 12 by 12 paper. For layout number 5, you should have 2 pieces of the sunflower, 2 pieces of the bronze or shimmer paper, 2 pieces of the green stripes, and 2 circles, and you will need 2 12 by 12 cardstocks. If you are participating in the bonus classes, you will have, for bonus layout number 1, you will have a large 12 by 12 in the brown. You'll have a layering, the stripe. You'll have a purple, a rust, and a shimmer. And you will need a white piece, 6.5 by 8.5. And I'm just going to use regular 8.5 by 11 paper for that. Seeing as it's already 8.5 wide, then I just need to trim it to 6.5 inches. For bonus class number 2, you should have an 8 by 10 of the stripe. You should have a couple pieces of the pumpkin paper, the supporting paper, a yellow, a couple pieces of purple, and a couple pieces of brown. And you will need 2 12 by 12, and in this case I am opting to go with the cream. So I'm going to use 2 of this cream textured cardstock. For the bonus card class, you are going to need 4 card bases that are 4 1/4 by 5.5. I have some already pre-made up. Of course, if you need these, you can just easily make them from plain cardstock. Take an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, cut it in, score it in half, and then cut it in half, and you will have your card bases. Now, I am going to opt to do a treatment on the card bases. If you don't want to alter the card bases, but you would rather have an additional layer, you would need 4 4¼ by 5½ pieces of cardstock. We are going to be embossing them, just so you know. In addition to the card bases, you need your shimmer papers. You should have 4 pieces of those. For the card class, you will need 3 white or cream card bases. Again, I have a bunch of pre-made, so that's just easy to slot that in. You should have half a rectangle, or no, half a triangle that we've trimmed in 2. You should have another rectangle piece of the feature paper, the supporting paper, your half doily, a small shimmer piece, rectangle piece of the stripe or layering, and then 2 card bases and 1 rectangle of the rest, and then of course your 4 pumpkin pieces that have been trimmed out. And we're going to add the card bases to that as well. Okay, now for the embellishment class. Basically, all your scraps are going to be free game for the embellishment class, and you just want to kind of organize those in a neat pile and stick that in the envelope. You should be good to go. For the embellishment class, we will be using a lot of punches, dies, etc., whatever you've got on hand. Check the supply list for recommendations of things that might work. And like I said, keep all of these together. You don't want to cut into these too much until the class is finished. And then after that, whatever's left over is free for you to do whatever you would like with. That is it for the cardstock prep. There will be a separate video that talks about printables, so be sure to check that out before the start of the event on October 23rd. I'm so excited about this event. I hope you guys are going to join. Please be sure to register either through the event in the Facebook group, Creatively Crafted Memories, or by emailing me at A Creatively Crafted Life. That way I can be sure to get you all the material so that you have the challenges, supply list, etc. Well in advance of the event. Looking forward to seeing you guys all there, and until next time, happy crafting.